I've spent the better part of my life wandering through deserts, both literal and metaphorical. The Sahara, the Gobi, the Atacama. Each one teaches you something about thirst, not just for water, but for meaning, for salvation, for someone to tell us which direction to walk when all we see is sand. Frank Herbert understood this thirst. When he published Dune in 1965, he wasn't just writing science fiction. He was writing a warning label for the human condition, a warning we've consistently ignored. Today, I want to talk about messiahs, not the divine kind, though we'll touch on that, but the ones we create, the ones we need to create, and why Herbert spent 6 novels trying to convince us that this need might be our most dangerous addiction. The question isn't whether Paul Atreides is a hero or a villain. The question is, why do we keep looking for Paul Atreides at all? Let's begin with what Herbert shows us, the manufacturing of a messiah. Paul Atreides doesn't emerge from a vacuum. He's the product of the Bene Gesserit's genetic breeding program, 10,000 years of manipulation to create the Kwisatz Haderach, a superhuman, a shortcut to power. But here's what's brilliant and terrifying. Paul is aware of his own construction. He can see the future, yes, but more importantly, he can see the machinery around him. The prophecies planted by the Missionaria Protectiva, the desperate faith of the Fremen, the political vacuum left by his father's death. He sees all the ingredients of Messianic legend, and he uses them anyway. Why? Because the alternative, the paths where he refuses the role, lead to even worse outcomes. Or so he tells himself, or so the prescient visions show him. But Herbert asks us, when you can see multiple futures, who decides which is worse? The Messiah. How convenient. This is Herbert's first warning. Beware the leader who claims they have no choice but to lead. Beware the Savior who says, I alone can see the way. Because what Paul discovers, what destroys him across the subsequent novels, is that prescience is a trap. The more you see, the narrower your path becomes. The more you know, the less free you are. The Messiah becomes a prisoner of their own mythology. In our world, we don't have prescience, but we have data, we have experts, we have leaders who claim to see what we cannot, who promise that if we just follow them, if we just believe, everything will be set right. Herbert wrote Dune during the Vietnam War, watching as leaders assured the public they could see the path to victory, that they understood the complexity better than anyone else. The bodies piled up anyway. Now let's talk about the Bene Gesserit's most insidious tool, the Missionaria Protectiva. This is the branch of the sisterhood that plants religious myths on primitive worlds. Insurance policies, really. Prophecies of a savior who matches the description of any Bene Gesserit who might one day need refuge there. Think about what this means. Religion, in Herbert's universe, is explicitly shown as a technology, a tool of control. The Fremen don't spontaneously develop a belief in the Lisan al-Gaib, the voice from the outer world. It's planted in their culture like a virus, waiting to be activated. And Paul, our conflicted protagonist, he activates it. He becomes the fulfillment of a prophecy he knows is fake. He rides the sandworm, performs the miracles, speaks the words that were designed centuries ago to manipulate people exactly like the Fremen. But here's the complexity Herbert forces us to confront. Does it matter that the prophecy is manufactured if it gives the Fremen the unity and strength to overthrow their oppressors, does it matter that Paul's messianic status is a lie if it leads to the liberation of Arrakis from Harkonnen brutality? This is the ethical quicksand at the heart of Dune. Good outcomes from manipulative means, freedom through controlled narrative, revolution led by an aristocrat using the tools of oppression. In our world, we see this constantly. Political movements that use religious language, leaders who wrap themselves in prophetic imagery, the rhetoric of destiny, of chosen people, of manifest purpose. Herbert shows us that this is never innocent. The moment you claim divine sanction, you place yourself beyond criticism, beyond accountability. And the freemen, the oppressed, the believers, they pay the price. Paul's jihad spreads across the universe, killing billions in his name. The liberation becomes an atrocity. The Messiah becomes the monster. But they believed. And belief, Herbert tells us, is the most dangerous force in the universe. Let me shift gears. Because Dune isn't just about politics and religion, it's about ecology. And this might be Herbert's most prescient warning of all. Herbert spent years studying desert ecosystems before writing Dune. He understood something profound. Deserts aren't wastelands. They're complex, balanced systems. Harsh, yes. Unforgiving, absolutely. But alive. Functioning. Complete. The Fremen understand this. Their entire culture is built around water conservation, ecological balance, respect for the desert that shapes them. They dream of transforming Arrakis into a paradise, green, wet, abundant. And this dream, Herbert suggests, might be their greatest tragedy. Because the spice, the melange that makes interstellar travel possible, that extends life, that grants prescience, the spice only exists because of the desert. The sandworms, the makers, they require the dry, harsh conditions. Transform Arrakis into a paradise, and you destroy the very thing that makes it valuable. You destroy the foundation of Fremen culture itself. This is ecological philosophy at its most sophisticated. The idea that improvement might be destruction, that imposing our vision of paradise on a functioning ecosystem, even a harsh one, is an act of violence. Paul sees this. He sees the future where Arrakis is green and the worms are dying and the spice is gone and the Fremen have lost their identity. But he also sees the future where the desert remains and the Fremen remain oppressed, caught between preservation and transformation, between tradition and progress. Sound familiar? We're living this dilemma right now. Climate change, resource depletion, the question of how we intervene in natural systems without destroying them. Herbert was writing in the 1960s, before the modern environmental movement, and he saw it all. He understood that ecology isn't just about nature, it's about power, about who decides what a landscape should be, about who benefits from transformation and who pays the cost. The Fremen dream of water, but water will kill them as surely as thirst, just more slowly, more comfortably, until they wake up one day and don't recognize themselves anymore. Here's what Herbert said in interviews. He was disturbed by how many readers saw Paul as a hero, because that was precisely what he was warning against. The seduction of the heroic narrative, the dangerous appeal of the chosen one. Think about the structure of most stories, the hero's journey, the special individual who rises above the masses, who has unique gifts, who is destined to save everyone. We're trained from childhood to love this story, to want to be that hero, or to find that hero and follow them. Herbert looked at this narrative and saw fascism. He saw the cult of personality. He saw every charismatic leader who promised simple solutions to complex problems, who claimed special insight, who demanded absolute loyalty. And he wrote Paul Atreides as a deconstruction, a warning. Paul has every advantage: genetic superiority, the best training in combat, strategy, and mental discipline, prescient visions, political legitimacy, religious prophecy, the loyalty of the most formidable warriors in the universe. He is literally designed to be the perfect leader, and he leads billions to their deaths, not through malice, through the inexorable logic of Messianic leadership. Once you're the chosen one, every action becomes justified. Every sacrifice becomes necessary. The jihad isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. It's what happens when you give one person that much power and convince everyone, including himself, that he has no choice but to use it. In Dune Messiah, the second book, Paul is trapped. He's become exactly what he feared: a figurehead, a symbol. The real Paul is irrelevant. The myth of Muad'Dib is what matters. And the myth demands blood, demands expansion, demands enemies to conquer and heretics to purge. This is Herbert's ultimate warning. The Messiah doesn't save you from tyranny. The Messiah is tyranny. Just tyranny you've agreed to, tyranny you've begged for, tyranny wrapped in prophecy and destiny and the promise that someone finally knows what they're doing. So, the Messiah we deserve. What does that mean? I think Herbert is telling us that we get the leaders we're willing to follow, that messianic figures don't impose themselves on unwilling populations. They emerge from our desperate need for certainty, for direction, for someone to tell us that everything will be okay if we just trust them. The Fremen aren't victims of Paul's manipulation. They're participants. They want the Lisan al-Gaib. They need him. Their oppression, their suffering, their dreams of transformation, all of it creates a vacuum that demands to be filled by a savior figure. And Paul, for all his power, is also trapped by this need. He can't refuse the role without condemning the Fremen to continued slavery. Or so the visions show, or so he believes. The Messiah and the believers create each other, lock each other into a dance that ends in jihad. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. The rise of strongman politics around the world, the appeal of leaders who promise simple solutions, the way we keep looking for someone to save us from complexity, from uncertainty, from the hard work of collective decision-making. Herbert saw this in the 1960s. He saw it in the cult of Kennedy, in the promises of Johnson, in the certainty of military leaders who assured everyone they knew the way forward. And he wrote a book saying, "Stop. Stop looking for saviors. Stop trusting the charismatic leader. Stop believing that anyone, no matter how gifted, should have that much power." Because here's the thing about messiahs. They don't stay saved. Paul's jihad kills billions, but it doesn't solve anything. It just creates new problems, new conflicts, new cycles of violence. By the end of the series, Herbert has Paul's son, Leto II, become a literal monster, a human sandworm hybrid who rules as a tyrant for 3,000 years. All to teach humanity one lesson: stop worshipping leaders. Learn to govern yourselves. Learn to live with uncertainty. Learn that there are no chosen ones, no special people who can see what you cannot. There's only us, Flawed, limited, stumbling through the desert together. The Messiah we deserve is no Messiah at all. It's the hard realization that we're responsible for our own future, that we can't outsource our moral agency to prophets and heroes, that the only way forward is through collective wisdom, ecological humility, and the courage to reject simple answers. Frank Herbert spent 6 novels trying to convince us of this. We're still not listening. We're still looking for Paul Atreides, still waiting for someone to ride the sandworm and make everything right. Maybe that's the real tragedy, not that messiahs fail us, but that we can't seem to stop creating them. The desert teaches patience, teaches humility, teaches that survival is a collective effort, not an individual triumph. Perhaps it's time we learn to listen,